Colleagues, friends, welcome to this prestigious event where we celebrate this significant milestone in Professor Melanie Wiese's academic career. I would now like to hand over to Professor Norman Duncan, the Vice Principal Academic at the University of Pretoria, to introduce Professor Melanie Wiese.
Members of the University Executive, Council and Senate, Professor Margaret Chitiga-Mabugu, Dean of the Faculty of Economic and Management Sciences, Acting Deputy Dean, Teaching and Learning, Professor Tian Stein, Deputy Dean, Research and Postgraduate Education, Professor Karen Barak, other academics from the University of Pretoria, as well as colleagues from other institutions of higher learning. Of course, Professor Melanie Wiese, Professor Wiese's family and friends, online audience, esteemed guests, it is my signal pleasure to welcome you to the inaugural lecture of Professor Wiese of the Department of Marketing Management in the Faculty of Economic and Management Sciences. Viewers, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I remind you that an inaugural lecture represents one of the most important milestones in the careers of academics, as it provides them the opportunity to inform the university community and academia more broadly about their academic journeys. More specifically, it provides an opportunity for newly appointed or promoted professors to share with us their research to date, as well as the direction in which they hope to steer the research in future. Above all, for us at the University of Pretoria, an inaugural lecture provides the university with an opportunity to showcase and celebrate the academic achievements of the professor presenting the inaugural lecture. Viewers, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, allow me now to introduce Professor Melanie Wiese to you. Professor Melanie Wiese has been an academic in the Department of Marketing Management in the Faculty of Economic and Management Sciences since 2006. Her research is largely in the field of consumer behavior. Professor Wiese obtained a BCom Marketing Management degree cum laude from the University of Pretoria in 1993. In 1997, she obtained a BCom Honours degree cum laude also from the University of South Africa. And in 2004, she obtained a master's degree in marketing management from the Tshwane University of Technology. Professor Wiese was awarded a PhD degree from the University of Pretoria in 2008. Her PhD research focused on the choice behavior of South African university students when selecting a tertiary institution. Professor Wiese is an NRF-rated researcher, and over the past 10 years, she has published more than 30 articles in accredited journals in her field. She is part of several international research teams and serves on the editorial board of the Southern African Business Review, as well as the Retail and Marketing Review. Over the years, she has collaborated with researchers from a number of countries, including France, Spain, Chile, Japan, Australia, and Germany. To date, Professor Wiese has supervised 6 doctoral and 14 master's students to the successful completion of their studies. In 2013, Professor Wiese won a UP Laureate Award for Teaching Innovation. She received the Best Senior Researcher in Management Sciences Award from a faculty in 2017 as well as 2018. On a more personal note, Professor Wiese has 2 children, both are UP alumni, and 1 grandson. She is married to Dr. Ben Wiese, who shares her passion for marketing. Viewers, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I now invite Professor Wiese to present her inaugural lecture titled Consumer Choice in an Ever-Changing Landscape. Over to you, Professor Wiese.
Thank you, Prof. Duncan, Vice Principal Academic, as well as the Dean of Faculty of Economic and Management Sciences, Prof. Margaret Chitiga-Mabugu, for the kind introduction. I also wish to acknowledge the members of my department, other colleagues from within UP, as well as colleagues current and previous from other universities. And finally, my family and friends joining me virtually today. Before I start, I would like to thank a few people that was instrumental in my academic journey. Firstly, I would like to thank Professor Ernest North, one of my PhD supervisors, but also the person that ignited the spark for academia and research and the launch of my academic career at UP, especially his belief in my abilities, even when I doubted it. Secondly, Prof. Yolanda Jordan, Head of the Department of Marketing Management. Thank you for your mentorship, expert guidance, encouragement, and support. Thank you for challenging me to think further, work harder, and seek out opportunities for growth. I would also like to thank all the colleagues I had the privilege to work with, especially those in the Department of Marketing Management, that created the environment that is conducive of being productive. Then to all the students I've supervised or taught, thank you for the opportunity to share my passion for education and research, but also allowing me the opportunity to build into your journeys, and by doing so, not leaving me untouched. I'm grateful for all the learnings from every student that crossed my path. Then, on a personal level, I would like to express my gratitude towards my parents and my parents-in-law for their ongoing love, support, and encouragement. To my husband, Ben, the biggest fan in my fan club, thank you for always believing in me, your unconditional love and support, and the knowledge that I always have you in my corner through the good and the bad. Lastly, my children, that keeps me grounded and constantly reminding me that if I can become a professor, surely it cannot be that difficult. Melandri and Yandra and my son-in-law, Niku, I love you and I value your support. And of course, my grandson, Leon, who reminds me that one should always remain a child at heart and never stop having fun. Just as these special people I thank today each touched and changed my life, so are consumer choices influenced by the ever-changing landscape. The future of marketing depends on understanding the transformation of consumer decision-making. More importantly, how this transformation will impact the choices consumers make, particularly what they buy, from whom they buy, why they buy, and if they should buy. In this address, I will highlight the complexity of consumer choices, speculate if consumers have or even want choices, and highlight 3 catalysts of change impacting on consumer choice behavior, before taking a more futuristic look by speculating on the future of consumer decision-making in the light of COVID-19. Economic choice theory describes what the rational consumer will do, but in reality, consumer choices are multidimensional and complex. To determine how consumers make choices in a complex world, it is important to recognize that ordinary people do not make decisions in a vacuum, and consumers are no different. Situational, social, psychological, cognitive, and individual factors need to be considered to provide a fuller perspective on how consumers respond to decision-making. In addition, consumers' decisions are found to be highly context-dependent, and as such, the context directly influences how decisions are made and which products and services selected. Making choices have become more and more complicated because consumers have so many alternatives, features, and information to consider. For marketing practitioners and academics alike, it is vital to understand what motivates a consumer to choose one product over another and why. Which factors in a consumer's everyday environment affect their choices and why? Who influence consumer choices and again, why? By understanding how consumers decide on a product, marketers can fill the gap in the market and identify products that are needed as well as the products that are absolute. Long-term sales stability is not just about having a great product. It's about meeting consumers' needs, understanding what makes them tick, and speaking to them in a way that want to make them to engage. In order to do this, consumer behavior insights can be used to inform marketing strategy with a 3-fold outcome: increase loyalty and return on investments for brands, increase satisfaction for the consumer, and finally, the positive impact on the well-being of society as a whole. One of the multitudes of social influences that influence consumer choice refer to the role of groups such as families in decision-making. Product and service choices are often the result of the consumer socialization process, and learning are directly correlated to the observation of role models such as celebrities, social media influencers, or parents. Research done by myself and a colleague found this to be true even for Generation Y and millennials. Although they have grown up totally immersed in the world of digital technology and boast of being independent, our findings suggest otherwise. The general perception of parents as role models affect the consumer choices of millennials, and this in turn affects their purchase behavior. Evidently, each generation influenced the next with regard to consumer behavior and how they make choices. If policymakers thus wish to change negative consumer behavior, such as an extreme focus on materialism, compulsive buying, or wasteful consumption, parents should be the first point of entrance to influence the following generation's behavior. Although millennials are likely to model their consumer and purchase behavior on their parental behavior when they leave home, this loyalty could be short-lived when other influences on their consumer behavior and brand choice intervene as time lapses. Given the complexity of consumer choices and the myriad of options available to consumers these days, the following question arises. Do consumers have or want a choice? I want to touch upon two choice scenarios, hyper-choice and no choice. Hyper-choice occurs when the sheer number of options consumers have caused them to become frustrated, thereby lengthening the choice process and diminishing the ability to make smart choices, or even ending up making no choice at all. These days, consumers have choices at their fingertips, literally. Just think of mobile applications and online shopping. And increased competition lead to the same but different situation. Think, for example, cellular phone contracts or data, with a myriad of options, very similar and confusing to really compare cross-product range or competitors. Let's apply this hyper-choice phenomenon to something as easy as paying for your cup of coffee. With cardless being the new cashless, options such as zapping, snapping, or tapping with a mobile phone or even a watch could leave consumers overwhelmed and confused. And for marketers, the dilemma of how to convince consumers to choose and importantly adapt and use yet another payment option. As explained in a recent published paper together with one of my PhD students using the Technology Readiness Index, it was evident that South Africans are ready to adopt mobile payment apps, even pre-COVID-19. There are various factors that influence their choices to download these apps, and then more importantly, to keep using these apps once the initial excitement subsides. While being positive about new technology and innovation, these factors did not have any meaningful influence on choosing to download these apps. It is rather the convenience and compatibility that these apps have with consumers' lifestyles that drive consumers. Risk and security concerns associated with downloading these apps do influence consumers' choices, but to a lesser extent. However, the technology readiness of consumers only predict the initial adoption, download and installation of these new mobile payment apps. The choice to continue to use these apps is influenced by another set of factors. Interesting to note is that usefulness and ease of use that are often indicated as the two factors that influence continued use in literature is not sufficient anymore. Therefore, brands need to rather focus on customer satisfaction levels if they want to ensure that consumers keep choosing and using their mobile payment apps, for example. The paradox of choice stipulates that while we might believe that being presented with multiple options actually makes it easier to choose and thus increase customer satisfaction, having an abundance of options actually could have the reverse effect. Consumers enjoy more choices today than ever, or so it seems. Often brands that are owned by different companies are produced by the same supplier, so they don't really offer the consumer any choice except in labels. Just as the choice between different consumer products is often an illusion, so too is the choice between different retailers. This pattern of diminishing choice and rising concentration reflect a profound change that is becoming more evident internationally but also locally. Monopolies often present themselves as champions of consumer choice, but this is rarely true. Traditionally, the focus in decision-making literature has been on understanding how consumers choose among a given set of alternatives. In addition to this no-choice illusion that I highlighted, there are other no-choice option scenarios as well. No choice can also refer to the notion where preference uncertainty may lead to a choice deferral, when no single alternative has a decisive advantage, thus a voluntary no-choice situation. However, in a context where no viable alternatives are available, it could lead us to a forced no-choice situation. One such example that South Africans are too familiar with is electricity supply. Access to reliable electricity is an essential service encapsulated in the Sustainable Development Goal 7 that deals with ensuring access to affordable, reliable, sustainable and modern energy for all. Unreliable power does not only pose a key barrier to economic development in emerging economies such as South Africa, but also affects the individual consumer behavior negatively. Planned systematic power outages that occur on a regular basis, often without warning to the public, is an example of essential service failure that spans across marketing and energy disciplines. These service failures impact on consumers' power, control, emotions, and overall well-being, as the lack of choice or alternatives lead to negative emotions and negative consumer behavior. In their effort to restore internal equilibrium, consumers choose to employ coping strategies, such as attributing the blame of a service failure to an external source. Often, when service failures are caused by situational or unfavorable environmental conditions, consumers tend to feel frustrated, while if the situation is to blame on a third party, they feel angry. In our research study, the results confirmed that South African consumers lacking agency and control over the power supplier because of the monopolized state of energy in South Africa, thus a typical no-choice situation, when they experience a planned essential service failure, such as load shedding, attribute blame towards the power utility, leading consumers feeling angry and frustrated. This in turn leads to negative behavioral outcomes. Findings from our research show that frustrated consumers choose to seek social support, while angered consumers are more likely to revert to venting or negative word of mouth. Power generation is not a service that is co-created. However, consumers can assist in reducing the strain on the power grid to lessen the demand to match the supply by choosing to engage in energy-saving activities. Our research also confirms that when customers blame the electricity provider or environment for planned service failure, their own customer involvement in reducing the strain on the power grid act as an additional coping strategy. Customer involvement provides some sort of power and choice to the consumer, which assists them in restoring the internal equilibrium, and as a result, reduces the relationship between the attribution of blame and negative emotions. Thus, even in a seemingly no-choice situation, providing some sort of an option or choice to consumers, such as engaging in energy-saving activities, as easy as changing to energy-efficient light bulbs, could bring relief for consumers, even if the option is not a substitute product or service or a solution to their problem. However, the world in which consumers live and make decisions, regardless if they are faced with a hyper-choice or no-choice situation, is not static, but ever-changing due to events seen as catalysts of change. Global economies are vulnerable to being impacted by catalysts capable of altering the economy, as well as the behavior of consumers within that economy. Catalysts can take various shapes and forms, but I will highlight three major catalysts, namely technological advancements, mediatization, and the COVID-19 pandemic. Technology such as the internet has not only accelerated globalization, but has caused a tremendous shift in consumer behavior. Among other things, technology has changed customers' buying patterns and how they make choices. Because of information technology, consumer behavior seems to be more influenced by the internet-enabled smartphones and tablets. And as a result, technology has literally placed the power in the consumer's hand. There is no doubt that technology has changed the approach of companies and how they conduct business and satisfy consumers. I want to highlight two technologies that has been part of my research, namely e-textbooks and online health communities. The internet has not only brought about a new technological era, but also seen the introduction of a number of emerging technologies, such as e-textbooks. However, the slow acceptance of e-textbooks is an issue of concern. Findings from one of our research studies showed that the two major obstacles identified in literature in adapting e-textbooks such as the access to electronic devices and lack of computer skills, were not an issue of concern for South African university students. Unfortunately, students' positive attitudes regarding e-textbooks did not necessarily result in high usage. Although the advantages of e-textbooks outweigh the disadvantages, the tangibility of the printed book seemed to be the main obstacle preventing e-textbook adoption. This finding is supported by various international studies. It seems that if it is not a problem that students dislike e-textbooks or that there is anything inherently wrong with the e-book, but rather a situation of students still preferring print textbooks or not really seeing the benefits of the e-book. E-textbooks provide interesting teaching and learning possibilities, and given that this research was pre-COVID, it would be interesting to see if student choices regarding textbooks have changed following the past 2 years of virtual classes, and an avenue that I will continue to explore. Poverty can be defined as the complete lack of means necessary to access products and services to meet basic needs. Aligned with the first of the 17 Sustainable Goals to end poverty in all its forms everywhere, our international team of researchers focused on research for a solution to meet the basic needs by improving and expanding access to healthcare. Thus, joining the Transformative Services research stream aiming to provide a deeper understanding of under-researched communities, to translate those findings into practice, and to help improve and better serve these populations. Our focus was on the healthcare choices of the impoverished consumer. We proposed that digital healthcare communities on platforms such as Facebook could play a critical role in terms of prevention, care, and cure in impoverished contexts. Despite having inadequate resources for the formal healthcare system, highly impoverished consumers have access to technology and tend to choose to seek and share health information over social media groups. These social media groups, known as online health communities, are complex networks with members who often deal with the emotional and informational demands of illness, where they exchange valuable information and provide helpful social support. Our findings showed that online health communities is a valuable co-created resource acting as a substitute for access to formal healthcare and complementary to formal healthcare systems. Due to the immense strain on delivering healthcare to poor patients, not only patients could benefit from online health communities, but also service providers could appreciate the opportunity to have vulnerable consumers participate in their own healthcare and in that of the community. It was evident in our research that online health communities successfully provide a platform for patients with chronic and non-chronic health conditions to share experiences, and in doing so, obtain and provide social, hedonic, and utilitarian benefits. Mistrust was found to negatively impact the relationship between utilitarian value and patient experience sharing, which highlights the importance of ensuring credible and trustworthiness of online information on such platforms. The trust issue in online health communities is important due to not only the privacy of personal information, but also given that acting on incorrect advice could result in dire consequences, even more so for the vulnerable consumer with low health literacy levels. The main driver to choose to share experiences online was solving health issues and improving well-being, while hedonic and social value played the role of secondary motivators. However, the influence of social value was found to be stronger for the non-chronic disease patients, as their choice to share experiences was fueled by a sense of belonging and a need for social interaction, while the influence of the hedonic value was stronger for chronic patients. Patients with a chronic disease try to help others with similar health issues, obtaining hedonic value as it makes them feel that they are contributing to improving the life of others. While access to healthcare services is limited in terms of time, cost, location, and disease type, these emerging technologies, such as online health communities, are offering indisputable transformative features of unlimited access to information and support at any hour of the day for private and anonymous conversations and communications with others in real time at very low cost. Thus, the two examples mentioned were those of technologies that provide alternative choices for university students in the form of e-textbooks, as well as those driving change in the way marginalized consumers access healthcare. Another catalyst, namely mediatization of the world and the increasing power of social networks, has led to consumer choices being increasingly based on social influences and engagement with brands. I will be highlighting advertising and commerce on these platforms, as well as engagement with brands via these platforms. Facebook advertising on social media, as well as Instagram, Pinterest, and TikToks, do not only provide users with a platform to interact and connect with like-minded individuals, but also to engage with brands. No wonder that Facebook advertising are used extensively by social marketers. But what influences users to choose to respond to these ad messages or brands that is almost intruding on their private yet social space? Research we've done in both developed and developing countries showed that while privacy concerns, having control over the number of ads and the intrusiveness of the ad impact consumer choices negatively, the value of the ad is ultimately the strongest influencer on the consumer's choice to engage. Facebook users choose to interact with Facebook ads by clicking or liking the ad, or interacting with the brand by visiting the website or purchasing products. Both depend on how users feel about the ad, but they tend to be more inclined to respond positively to the ad message than the brand itself. Interesting, consumers' attitudes towards Facebook ads are correlated to how they feel about ads in general. Thus, although Facebook advertising may be a new technology, how consumers choose to respond to these ads are not so new, emphasizing the principle that consumers in general try to keep their cognitive system in balance. In recent years, privacy concerns have become a major issue, and even though findings at a global level support the socializing role of Facebook in cultivating more relaxed privacy attitudes, it still impacts on users' attitudes and behavior. Not surprisingly, given the incidents such as Facebook data leaks and privacy legislation in South Africa, such as the POPI Act. As brand communities continue to migrate online, it becomes important to determine what motivates consumers to choose to engage with online brand communities, such as Facebook fan pages. Research done in conjunction with one of my PhD students and an international team of researchers revealed that users choose to join Facebook fan pages due to a sense of belonging to these fan pages, providing them with hedonic value such as entertainment. The power of peers also influence them to be part of this brand community. Interesting, the findings show that utility value of these communities, such as a convenient source of information, did not really influence their choices. Our research confirmed that there is a movement towards a more globalized Facebook consumer, as evidenced in the similar results obtained in various countries, supporting the notion of Facebook being a multicultural marketplace. Consumer choices is moving towards being more homogeneous, and variation in consumer or country technology readiness, infrastructure limitations, or even uneven retail conditions is fading away in the digital space. Driven by the technological advancements and mediatization, e-commerce, m-commerce, and social commerce has reached global proportions. Electronic or e-commerce is an umbrella term for selling and buying online, while M or mobile commerce is a subcategory of commerce that focuses on purchasing via mobile devices. And finally, social or S-commerce is used to describe an emerging trend where the seller and the buyer are connected to the online social media network. Of the three, little is known about how consumers choose to engage in communicating and purchasing, specifically through firms' social network environments. As an international team, we examined factors that influence consumers' intention to engage in e-commerce using brands' Facebook pages in a cross-country study including Chile, Spain, South Africa, and Australia. Although there were slight differences among the countries, taken together, these findings support the idea that e-commerce is mainly affected by consumer satisfaction with the brand's social network site, based on the trust in the community members and a sense of involvement, as well as by peer communication and social media dependency. Our results imply that a global marketing strategy would be employed by brands, thus using a global brand message adapting to the local culture. In addition to the technological advancements and mediatization, most recently, COVID-19 is a perfect example of a transformative event that are pushing human behavior towards different directions, with some aspects of consumer behavior being irreversible. Who would have thought that a pandemic, essentially a health crisis, would turn into an economic crisis, disrupting global markets and economies, becoming a catalyst for changing consumer behavior? The impact of COVID-19 on consumer traits, buying patterns, psychographical behavior, and other marketing activities is therefore of interest to researchers and marketers wishing to adapt to these changes. As a result, our most recent research set out to understand consumers' experiences of and responses to this life-changing event, and how this affects their emotions, general well-being, and consumer behavior. Consumers experience vulnerability when they lack personal control and respond to feeling powerless and vulnerable with coping mechanisms, where regulating emotions are key. Therefore, when consumers experience powerlessness due to the lockdown restrictions imposed by government, even if those restrictions are for the sake of survival, they experience vulnerability and enact coping mechanisms. Following the alienation theory, our research showed that during lockdown levels 4 and 5 in 2020, consumers felt powerless, and that this negatively impacted their quality of life, which triggered various coping mechanisms. One such strategy was information sharing via online platforms and social media to assist other consumers. Engaging in negative word of mouth about the government and lockdown regulations to vent their frustrations, and seeking out others for social support. What is interesting is that it seems as if the primal instinct of survival is visible during a time of crisis, not just in activities such as stockpiling, but support seeking was also the most evident behavior, emphasizing that in general consumers naturally make choices first and foremost to help themselves. The assessment of quality of life represents an important indicator of global well-being, which allows us to grasp the state of well-being of a population in a multidimensional way, especially in this particular moment when nearly all dimensions of life has been disrupted. It is interesting to note that for South Africans, generally, their quality of life did not improve or worsen due to COVID. However, aspects of quality of life that were impacted negatively were related to job security, being able to perform their jobs effectively, and having enough money. This correlates with international trends of spending less on non-necessities, for example, and more on technologies such as Wi-Fi and computers. Worth noting is that some aspects improved, for example, personal safety in and around the house, namely being protected from crime and incidents, as well as being able to enjoy home life. Yet again, a clear link with changes in consumer choices, where an increase in spending on home entertainment in renovations is evident globally. But what does the post-COVID consumer choice behavior look like? A critical situation pushes human behavior towards different directions, with some aspects of the behavior being irreversible. For example, work moved remotely, shopping, entertainment, and medicine went online. Since all elements of the economy are interrelated with public health measures and lockdown, it resulted in economic instabilities, leading to a change in the market dynamics. In every market, consumers are the drivers of the market competitiveness, growth, and economic integration. With economic instability, consumers are also experiencing a transformative event, and there's change in their behavior. Though how much of their transformation will last and sustain is the question we still need to answer. Witnessing a global pandemic for almost 2 years now, the question on everyone's mind, will the post-pandemic consumer revert back to pre-pandemic behavior? Or has this transition changed consumer behavior for good? And this is where my research will focus for the years to come. Almost everyone has turned into a digital native as consumers turn towards the digital narrative. Restricted by national lockdowns and with only essential stores operating, had no choice than to shop online. However, unlike the pre-COVID era, new and diverse audiences have now been introduced to the world of online shopping. For example, the impact of COVID-19 especially affected the elderly, who found themselves isolated in their own homes or institutions, leaving them with no choice than becoming digital savvy overnight. Once the dust settles and we return to normal activity, will those new digital natives rush back to stores? Or will a hybrid approach that blends on and offline shopping prevail? For some products and services where experiences and inspiration are important aspects of the choice process, in-store activity will surely remain. One can only speculate, but it's unlikely that consumers will return to the habit of purchasing everything in-store. Pandemic restrictions resulted in people spending most, if not all of their time in their local environment. Working from home has become the order of the day. Home is now the new command central for all activities. Coupled with a desire to avoid large shopping malls and a result of safety concerns and the newfound interest for neighborhoods and support for independent businesses, many consumers switch to shopping and services within their local area. Supporting local businesses has grown globally, and this trend is evident in South Africa as well. These often small and local independents create a distinctive community-based feel to the shopping experience, often combined with a drive towards sustainability and authenticity. Will these smaller independent retailers be able to maintain the momentum and creativity harnessed in the lockdown as consumers settle into the new normal? The answer is still out for the jury to decide. During the pandemic, people are spending less of their income on items perceived as nice-to-haves or non-essentials, such as expensive clothing, shoes, makeup, and jewelry, while spending has shifted towards computers, Wi-Fi, home, online retailers, and delivery services. The little to no spending on travel, cinemas, and events is slowly gaining some momentum, even if it's still driven by local consumers. It is already evident that retailers are focusing more on essentials for the festive season instead of over-the-top Christmas novelties and Christmas packaging and branding. Festive shopping will look a little different this season. While shoppers may have a little more to spend than last year, one can expect more online shopping with preference for delivery and pickup options. Consumers more than ever before will make their purchase decisions based on information they will find online and the recommendations of people they know, as well as social media influencers. Household budgets remain extremely tight, in addition to the uncertainty about what the next year will bring. Consumers will be looking for specials such as Black Friday to buy special electronics, digital devices, essentials, and affordable gifts. Given that retailers are running out of time to recuperate from the sales slump, many companies are extending Black Friday to cover the entire month of November. We may also see consumers choosing brands that provide personalization, purpose, and authenticity. Other people's behavior shapes our own, especially during a time of change when we're uncertain about what to do. Now that social distancing has decreased our interaction with others, we're finding new ways to explore and establish the status quo online, emphasizing the role of social media influencers, online reviews, and recommendations in consumer choices. Companies rapidly deploy digital and automatization technologies to adapt to the changes within this dramatic landscape, and they dramatically escalated these trends that were unfolding at a much slower pace before the crisis and during the crisis. In conclusion, many of the longer-term changes in consumer behavior are still being formed, providing companies the opportunity to help shape the next normal, and as such, plenty of unexplored research opportunities for marketing academics. What is clear is that many aspects of the pre-COVID reality will change, and it's up to the industry and academics, though, through research to shed light on the what, why, and how of these changes. By pursuing research that can make an impact on areas of great societal need, universities can illustrate that they are interconnected with society. COVID-19 research can demonstrate that universities contribute to the well-being and advancement of South Africa, Africa, and the world. And for researchers such as myself, reimagining marketing in the next normal. I remain excited about the opportunities within my research focus area. I trust that you have enjoyed a glimpse into my passion of consumer decision making. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Wiese, for such an illumination and an excellent inaugural address. Thank you for showing me that I am not alone when I think of what to buy, why to buy, and when to buy. I believe I'm going to be more deliberate about my choices in the future, thanks to you. Thank you for your insights on these questions. What motivates a consumer to choose one product over another and why? Which factors in a consumer's everyday environment affect their choices and why? Who influences consumer choices and why? This work that you do should certainly be extremely important for any business or for anyone selling anything. Your research is so rich in exposing issues relating to technology, to poverty, to ethics, among many others. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you very much. It would be remiss of me if I did not thank Professor Wiese's husband, Ben, and their two children, Melanie and Yanre, for their support. Thank you very much.